What's up, space pirates? This is your Admiral, the endlessly edgy Dr. Disaster, and Square Enix just had their financial results briefing, and it was such an underwhelming report overall that you could almost sense the resentment toward the people not buying their games.
Kiss my hairy buttocks!
One of the interesting bits of information from the report was learning from an outside analyst who analyzed the findings, saying that Life is Strange Double Exposure actually cost Square Enix a fair amount of money. And as you can see here from the Steam charts, nobody played that thing. They couldn't even hit 9,000 concurrent players at its peak, and these days, a few months after the game's release, they barely hit 100 players. For folks who want to see more female-oriented games in the male-dominated gaming spaces, this is bad news. But for the rest of us, well, we're thinking,
oh yeah!
In this same earnings report, the CEO of the company announced that Final Fantasy XVI has been the biggest failure for a mainline title in the series of all time thus far. It has apparently only sold 3.5 million copies in damn near 2 years, which is extremely informative. The company has been leaning on the cultural auto intake crowd to simply buy their games no matter what whenever they release a Final Fantasy title, but the amount of people willing to do that is dwindling.
Do you trust me?
There's no going back. You've changed things.
So yeah, it wasn't exactly a sterling report for Square Enix. Not as bad as the likes of Ubisoft, of course, but this is a company which really needs to drop all of its Western influences and get back to its roots, because everything that they are picking up from the West, which caused them to make games like Life is Strange, Forspoken, or to practically take the J out of the JRPGs that they are known for, all of that is causing them to lose significant amounts of money.
Remember who you are. I'm retarded?
Oh, hell no, I'm out of here.
Alright, me hearties, make sure that you hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to follow me on X, where my handle is Dr. Disaster 1. But alrighty then, let's dive into these stories from the Square Enix earnings report. This one about Life is Strange losing them a shitload of money comes from the website 80 Level, and it says, proving that, at least in this instance, the SteamDB user numbers and player review scores do indeed serve as an accurate reflection of a game's financial performance. Deck 9 Games' Life is Strange Double Exposure has reportedly resulted in significant losses for its publisher Square Enix, and has even been cited as the reason for the company's operating profit decreasing compared to the previous year. And looky there, we've got a picture of the game at the bottom of the page there, and a big old gay pride flag right in the middle of it. Isn't that just precious? Though I will say this, of all of the game series out there that should have that sort of iconography, Life is Strange is the one that should have it. This is a series that saw its peak popularity around 10 years ago, right when the activists and tourists first started invading the hobby. This type of game sold well for a few years because it was extremely easy to play for all of these non-gamers. Basically, a mildly interactive movie, but the modern audience has moved on. They were never going to stay, and now games like this are flopping. But Reading ahead in the article a bit, it says here, according to an outside analyst, the game's poor performance was so severe that Life is Strange Double Exposure was responsible for the company's operating income decreasing by 4.4% during the entire 9-month period from quarter 1 through quarter 3 in fiscal year 2025 compared to the same period in 2024. Although the analyst hasn't provided any estimates for how large those significant losses are in terms of a concrete number of copies sold, the Steam analytics website Gamealytic estimates the game sold, in its best case scenario, only around 145,000 copies on Steam. This would likely mean that across all platforms, the game sold between 300,000 and 500,000 copies or fewer, a result that would indeed mean substantial financial losses for the publisher given the cost of modern AAA titles. And while Final Fantasy XVI sales are much better than that, it certainly isn't stacking up at all compared to the previous entries in the Final Fantasy series. As you can see from the headline of this article from Game World Observer, Final Fantasy XVI has only hit 3.5 million copies sold, indicating stalled sales. And if you look at this post from X here, you can see that the game is absolutely failing compared to previous mainline entries in the series. In fact, it's safe to call it the biggest loser of them all by a fair margin. Keep in mind, I have heard from people that 16 is actually a reasonably fun game, but people like me have checked out to the point that I'm just not in a big rush to play it. I'll buy it secondhand someday, eventually. But let's look at this post a bit more closely. It says, Square Enix CEO says Final Fantasy XVI has only sold 3.5 million copies so far in the most recent earnings presentation, a historical failure. In comparison, here are the sales of every other Final Fantasy 1 year and 9 months after their respective releases. And then it says that 15 sold 7.7 million. Final Fantasy VII Remake sold 5 million. Final Fantasy XIII sold 6 million. FF12 sold 5 million. 10 sold 5.8 million, 9 sold 4.3, FF8 sold 6.6, and 7 sold 6 million. 1 through 6 sold less than 3 million, but as it says at the bottom of this post here, that means that 16 is selling barely better than the Famicom, NES, and SNES games in the series, 3 of which were Japan only by that point of their release. This is absolutely unacceptable for a Final Fantasy game. Once again, what this tells us is that when the game first came out, there was a rush to buy it from all of those people who get FOMO, who just can't help themselves. They see a new Final Fantasy game and they just whip out their wallets. It was reported that the game sold 3 million copies at release, and the usual suspects in the mainstream media were clapping like crazy, cheering on their corporate masters. But in the big picture, the game is a failure. There hasn't been an official announcement as to the development cost of 16, but it is likely somewhere in the ballpark of $100 to $200 million. When you factor in the marketing costs, there is virtually no way that the game has made them any money thus far. So this notion that was talked about the other day, where the director of FF7 Rebirth came out and told us that they are now making games for a global audience, essentially westernizing and removing the Japanese style from their legendary RPGs, it just isn't working. The only way for Square Enix to get back to prominence is to embrace what they really are. But I'm going to leave it there. Drop your thoughts on Square Enix and what you think they should do next into the comment section below, and we will talk there. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your Admiral is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.